Elvis opened the door with a profound exhale, placing his keys on the small table near the entrance. The house was eerily silent, the kind of quiet that felt unsettling. He stopped, straining his ears for the usual noise of his children playing or the sound of dishes being washed, but there was only silence. It seemed as if the vitality of the home had been drained away. He moved down the hallway, his shoes clicking on the wooden floor. As he rounded the corner into the living room, he stopped abruptly. His wife, Marie, stood in the center of the room, her back to him, frantically stuffing clothes into a large suitcase. The scene was so shocking that he momentarily questioned if he was dreaming. "What the hell is happening?" Elvis demanded, his tone sharp with bewilderment. Marie didn't pause. She continued packing in a hurried, almost robotic manner. "I'm through, Elvis," she declared, her voice icy and remote. "I'm tired of struggling from paycheck to paycheck with you. I've found someone superior, someone with means not like your mediocre existence, and yes, he's younger and exceedingly wealthy, unlike you, idiot." Elvis felt as though the ground had vanished beneath him. "Maria, what are you talking about?" he inquired, moving closer, attempting to meet her gaze, but she kept her focus on folding a dress meticulously. "What about the children, Maria? What about our family?" His voice cracked, desperation evident. Finally, Marie looked up, her gaze cold and emotionless. "It's simple, Elvis. You're their father, you take care of them. I want to enjoy my life. I'm done playing house with you." Elvis opened his mouth to reply, but before he could speak, the sound of a powerful engine echoed from outside. He turned just in time to see a sleek black SUV pull up. The door opened, and a man who could be mistaken for a model from a magazine emerged, tall and sharply dressed, smirking confidently. He strode up to the front door, pushed it open without knocking, and entered. "Hey, loser," he taunted, scrutinizing Elvis disdainfully. "She's mine now, and you can keep the kids. We don't want those brats." Elvis's heart sank as he tried to process the unfolding events. "Maria, are you serious?" he whispered, barely audible. Before she could respond, the sound of small feet pattering emerged, and their 8-year-old daughter, Rose, rushed into the room, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "Mummy, what's happening? Where are you going?" she trembled. Maria glanced briefly at her. "I'm leaving, Rose. You're staying here with your father." Tears filled Rose's eyes as she clung to her mother's leg. "Mummy, please don't go," she pleaded, her small hands gripping Maria's jeans tightly. Maria detached her leg with a look of distaste. "Let go, Rose. I need to leave then." Jake, their 15-year-old son, appeared at the doorway, his face pale and eyes red from tears. "Mum, please don't do this," he choked out, his voice laden with sorrow. "We need you. We're a family. You can't just leave us." Maria's expression remained unchanged as she grabbed another blouse to pack. "You'll be fine, Jake. You have your father. I need to think of myself for once." Elvis watched as his children's hearts broke in front of him, their pleas ignored. Anger flared within him, intense and searing, but he managed to keep his voice calm. "Maria, if you go with this jerk, don't think you can return when the illusion fades. You're not welcome back ever, and the kids will despise you forever." Maria hesitated for a moment, the blouse in her hands pausing mid-air, but then the man behind her coughed, and her determination solidified. She zipped up the suitcase, closed it with a snap, and faced Elvis. "This is your issue now," she stated, her tone as neutral as if she were discussing the weather. She took the suitcase handle and walked past Elvis without looking back, her new partner trailing behind. The door slammed shut, its sound reverberating through the now hauntingly silent house. Elvis remained frozen, his mind blank, until Rose's soft cries pierced the quiet. He bent down, embracing his daughter tightly. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to be okay," he murmured, even though his words felt empty. Jake lingered in the doorway, his fists balled, his expression stern. "Dad, what do we do now?" he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. Elvis gazed up at his son, feeling the weight of their altered lives pressing down on him. He wished he could offer comforting words, but he was at a loss for answers. All he could manage was to hold his daughter closer, hoping they could somehow navigate their way forward. The roar of the SUV's engine filled the air outside, and Elvis's chest constricted as he heard the tires grinding on the gravel, taking Maria and her new partner away. He rose slowly, inhaled deeply, and faced his children. "We're going to get through this," he declared, speaking more to reassure himself. "We have to." Jake's gaze was resolute. "We don't need her," he stated, though his voice shook slightly. "We'll be okay, Dad. Elvis managed a weak smile, tussling his son's hair. "Yes, we will. But for now, let's just get through tonight." He led them to the kitchen, where he started dinner mechanically. The familiar routine steadied his nerves as he focused on cooking. Yet, as he glanced at his children seated quietly at the table, the full impact of the evening weighed on him like a heavy blanket. They dined in silence, the clink of silverware the only sound. Unable to erase the image of Maria leaving or the echo of her harsh words, Elvis found the evening difficult. After dinner, he sent the children to bed, promising to talk more in the morning. He sat at the kitchen table, long after cleaning up, staring blankly at the wall. The house felt more hollow than ever, as if Maria had taken more than just her belongings. Eventually, he stood up slowly and made his way to his bedroom. The bed seemed too large, the quiet too overwhelming. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night's events. Maria's departure had turned their lives into an emotional battlefield. Elvis felt as if he were walking through a fog, struggling to accept the new reality that had engulfed him and his children. Every corner of the house reminded him of their shattered life: Rose's discarded toys, Jake's abandoned soccer shoes, the partly empty closet. Each memory weighed heavily on him.
Each morning, Elvis forced himself out of bed, driven by duty. His children needed him more than ever, and he couldn't afford to break down, though each day felt like a battle against a relentless tide of despair. Rose was the first to manifest the toll Maria's departure had taken. Always sensitive, her sadness now seemed deeper. Each night, Elvis heard her stifled cries through the thin walls. "Daddy, where's Mummy? Why doesn't she want to be with us?" She would ask in a tiny, fragile voice as he tucked her in. His heart shattered each time he responded, "Mummy's gone for now, sweetie, but I'm here, and I always will be." "We'll be okay, I promise." He stroked her hair, trying to comfort her, but he saw the uncertainty in her eyes. As days turned to weeks, Rose's bright smile faded, replaced by a constant expression of confusion and sadness. She clung to Elvis, fearful that he too might vanish.
Jake, on the other hand, responded with anger. His frustration was like a blaze that he couldn't extinguish, and it consumed him. He began skipping meals, isolating himself in his room, and avoiding conversation with anyone. When he did emerge, it was usually to slam doors, yell at his sister, or bicker with Elvis over trivial matters. "Why the hell did she leave us, Dad? What did we do wrong?" he would yell, his fists balled, as though he wished to strike anything to ease his pain. Elvis saw the anguish beneath Jake's fury, the hurt his son was struggling to mask. He attempted to engage Jake in conversation, but each discussion ended in a yelling match. "It's not your fault," Jake, Elvis would insist, trying to connect with his son, but Jake wasn't ready to accept it. "She doesn't care about us, Dad. She left because she couldn't care less about our family," Jake exclaimed one evening, his voice hoarse with emotion. He stormed out before Elvis could respond, leaving Elvis standing, feeling powerless and deeply pained for his son. Elvis realized he needed to do more than just hope time would mend their wounds. He needed to demonstrate to Jake and Rose that they could still be a family, even though things would never be the same. He embraced his role as both mother and father with renewed vigor, rising early to prepare breakfast before they left for school and ensuring he was there when they returned. He found himself attending every parent-teacher conference and every school event, even those Maria had managed, supporting every soccer match, school play, and significant moment for his children. Meanwhile, the desire for revenge quietly simmered in the back of Elvis's mind. He couldn't erase the image of Maria leaving, her new partner smirking as he took everything from him. The anger was always there, just beneath the surface, waiting to erupt, but he suppressed it, focusing instead on supporting his children. One day they'll understand what they've done, he thought, gripping the steering wheel as he drove to work. They can't just walk away without facing any consequences. One evening, after another strained dinner where Jake barely spoke, Elvis decided it was time to confront the central issue. As they finished eating, Elvis addressed his son, his tone calm but resolute. "Jake, we need to talk." Jake looked up, his expression wary. "About what? What's going on?" "I know things have been hard since your mum left, and I know you're angry," Elvis started, choosing his words with care. "But we're still a family, Jake. We need to stick together." Jake slammed his fork down. "How, Dad? How are we supposed to be a family when she just abandoned us like we meant nothing to her?" Elvis leaned in, meeting Jake's gaze. "I don't have all the answers, Jake. I wish I did. But I know one thing, we're not nothing. We have each other, and that's something. It's everything. Jake looked away, his jaws set. It's not the same, Dad. It never will be, no. It won't, Elvis agreed, his voice laden with acknowledgement. But that doesn't mean we give up. We can't control what she did, but we can decide how we move forward. We'll get through this, Jake, together. For the first time in weeks, Jake's tough exterior showed a crack, if only slightly. He didn't respond, but the tension in his shoulders relaxed a bit. Elvis took that as a minor victory. After dinner, as Jake withdrew to his room and Rose snuggled on the couch with her favorite stuffed animal, Elvis sat in the living room, gazing out into the dark night. The pain was still there, raw and relentless, but so was his resolve. He had to be strong for his children, no matter what. Yet, underneath it all, thoughts of revenge continued to grow stronger each day. Elvis knew he needed to be cautious, to think things through. The last thing he wanted was to act recklessly in a way that could further harm his children, but he couldn't let Maria and her partner get away with what they had done. They'll pay for this, he thought to himself, his jaw clenching. I'll make sure of it. In the days that followed, Elvis's determination only intensified. He started to prepare meticulously for what he knew would be a lengthy and thorough process. He couldn't rush it. Patience was necessary to wait for the perfect opportunity. Meanwhile, he would concentrate on his children, on rebuilding their lives, and on ensuring they felt loved and valued. Yet, deep down, Elvis was aware that this was merely the start. The real battle was still ahead, and when it arrived, he would be prepared. He intended to show Maria and her partner that they had made the greatest error of their lives. As months passed, the sharp pain of betrayal evolved into a constant ache, one that Elvis couldn't completely dispel. His life, once shattered, had slowly begun to mend. His children were adjusting to their new situation, but the wounds from their mother's departure remained raw. Rose gradually stopped inquiring about her mother, although the sadness lingered in her eyes. Jake, less angry now, had become more withdrawn and skeptical. But Elvis observed all this and felt a deep sense of injustice. He couldn't let Maria and Greg escape the repercussions of their actions. Elvis, always methodical, applied the same calculated precision to his responsibilities, his work, and now his quest for retribution. He began by gathering information, knowing he needed a clear understanding of their new lives if he was to make them accountable. Thus, he employed a private investigator, a discreet and meticulous retired officer named Moray. Elvis, you're going to want to sit down for this, Moray advised, passing him a thick envelope filled with reports and photographs as they sat in a dimly lit corner of a bar, away from curious eyes. Elvis opened the envelope and started reviewing the contents. The more he read, the tighter his grip on the documents became. Greg was not the successful entrepreneur he pretended to be. His wealth was precarious, built on shaky deals, fraudulent activities, and ties to dubious individuals. The photographs depicted Greg with individuals who appeared more like enforcers than businessmen, and entering buildings known from criminal investigations. His whole empire is a sham, Moray disclosed. He's been siphoning funds from his companies, laundering them through shell corporations. It's only a matter of time before it collapses. But it gets worse. Your wife, she's deeply involved as well. She's been lavishly spending money, but it's all tainted. If this collapses, she'll fall with him. A stern satisfaction began to brew in Elvis's chest. Maria had abandoned him and their children for a life of imagined luxury, but that dream was soon to turn into a nightmare. Thanks, Maria, Elvis acknowledged, standing up. I'll take it from here. With this information in hand, Elvis commenced his plan. He knew confronting Greg directly wasn't wise. He needed a subtle, intelligent approach. His first move was to sow seeds of doubt within Greg's business circles. Elvis began sending anonymous tips to Greg's clients and investors, highlighting inconsistencies in his business dealings, ensuring the information appeared to come from various sources to avoid detection. Soon, the impact became evident. One by one, Greg's investors withdrew, deals that had been in development for months collapsed, and rumors began to rapidly spread throughout the business community, precipitating the downfall of Greg's empire. Elvis observed everything from a distance, feeling a cold sense of satisfaction as Greg's life fell apart. Meanwhile, Elvis was quietly rebuilding his own life. He immersed himself in his work with renewed vigor, staying late at the office, taking on new projects, and establishing connections that would enhance his career. His hard work paid off. He earned a promotion, which came with a substantial pay increase. But it wasn't solely about the money. Elvis wanted to show himself and his children that they could overcome the betrayal. He wanted Maria to see the man she had left behind successful, respected, and stronger than ever. As his professional life thrived, Elvis also began to focus more on his personal life. For a long time he had closed himself off from the idea of love, too wounded and too preoccupied with his children to consider starting anew. But as time passed, he recognized that he didn't want to spend his life alone. He deserved happiness as much as his children did. It was at a company event that Elvis met Lisa, a colleague from another department. She was smart, kind, and her warm smile seemed to thaw the ice around his heart. They began chatting, initially about work, then gradually about their personal lives. Lisa, a single mother, understood the challenges Elvis faced. She had experienced her own difficulties and didn't need the pain of betrayal explained to her. One evening, after a particularly engaging dinner conversation, Elvis realized he was developing feelings for Lisa. The idea frightened him initially, opening up again. After all he had endured, but Lisa made it easy. She was patient, understanding, and importantly, genuinely cared for him and his children. When Elvis eventually introduced Lisa to Jake and Rose, he was anxious about their reaction. However, to his relief, they warmed to her quickly. Lisa didn't try to replace their mother, she simply wanted to support them. She listened to Rose's stories, assisted Jake with his homework, and her presence soon brought a missing warmth back into their home. Laughter filled the rooms again, and the constant tension began to fade. Elvis felt that things were finally moving in the right direction, yet his plan wasn't quite complete. The final piece was ensuring that Maria saw exactly what she had lost. As Greg's empire crumbled, Maria's world unraveled alongside it. Through mutual acquaintances, Elvis learned that she was panicking. The luxurious life for which she had abandoned her family was slipping away. Greg had become distant, their relationship strained under the financial pressures. It wasn't long before Elvis received the news he had anticipated. Greg had left Maria alone, broke, and with nowhere to turn. Elvis ensured that Maria heard about his success and the life he had rebuilt without her. He wanted her to know that he and the children were thriving, that they had moved on, and she was the one left behind. One day, while at his office, Elvis received a text from an unknown number. It was Maria, requesting a meeting. Elvis contemplated the message for a long time before agreeing to see her. He already knew how the meeting would unfold. When they met, the confident, glamorous woman who had left months before was nowhere to be seen. In her place was someone who appeared tired and desperate. She attempted to apologize and explain, but Elvis wasn't interested in revisiting the past. "I'm not here to talk about the past," he stated firmly. "I'm here to tell you that it's over. I've rebuilt my life, and I've found someone who truly cares about me and the kids. You made your choice, Maria, and now you have to live with it." As he walked away from that meeting, Elvis felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had achieved what was necessary, not only for himself but also for his children. They had endured tremendous hardship but emerged stronger, and now they were ready to leave the past behind and look forward to a brighter future. As Elvis's life flourished with newfound happiness and success, Maria's world fell apart rapidly. The man she had left her family for, Greg, had become a stranger, distant, resentful, and increasingly hostile as his business empire crumbled. The luxury SUV that had once been a symbol of her upgraded lifestyle was repossessed. The expensive clothes she used to show off were now reminders of a fading dream. Each day she felt reality's grip tightening, suffocating the life out of the fantasy she had pursued. It started with small changes. Dinners that had once been at the city's finest eateries turned into cheap takeout, and the weekend escapes became long, silent nights at home with Greg drinking and staring blankly at the TV. Then, the creditors began to call. Greg would answer, his face twisting in anger, yelling about failed deals and investors backing out. Maria would retreat to the bedroom, clutching a pillow, hoping the nightmare would end. But things only deteriorated. One evening, the tension reached a breaking point. Greg burst into their apartment, his expression contorted with rage. "This is all your fault," he accused, throwing his jacket to the floor. "Ever since you entered my life, everything has gone downhill. I should have never changed my life for you." Maria, who had been sitting on the couch, looked up in shock. "What are you talking about, Greg? Aren't we in this together? Greg sneered, his eyes filled with contempt. "You were just a fun diversion, a toy. But now, you're just bad luck. Everything I touch turns to ruin, and it's because of you." His voice escalated with each word, and Maria felt the impact of his words like a physical blow. "Greg, please," she pleaded, standing to face him. "We can work through this, we can." "No, shut up," he interrupted, shaking his head dismissively. "I'm done. I found someone else, someone younger, someone who doesn't spell disaster wherever she goes. I'm leaving. You're on your own." With that, Greg turned and began packing his belongings. Maria stood frozen, her mind struggling to comprehend what was unfolding. This couldn't be happening. He couldn't just leave her, not after all she had sacrificed. But as she watched him hastily pack his suitcase, the harsh reality settled in. The man she had left her family for, who had promised her a life of luxury and joy, was abandoning her without a second thought. "Greg, please don't do this," Maria begged, tears streaming down her face. "I have nowhere to go. Please." But Greg ignored her, zipping up his suitcase and heading for the door. "You'll figure something out," he muttered, without a glance back. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Maria alone in the now empty apartment. The ensuing silence was overwhelming. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, realizing she had lost everything. In the following days, Maria's life spiraled further into despair. She attempted to contact friends, but no one responded. She had alienated too many people, and now she was facing the consequences. The apartment, once a symbol of her new beginning, now felt like a prison, the walls closing in, suffocating her with the weight of her errors. Desperate, and with no other options, Maria decided to do something she had once deemed unimaginable. She would return to Elvis and the family she had left behind. Surely they would take her back. She was their mother, after all. They couldn't just turn her away. She planned to apologize, beg for forgiveness, and perhaps, just perhaps, she could reclaim some of the life she had discarded. With shaking hands, Maria knocked on the door of the house she once considered home. Each knock echoed through the quiet suburban neighborhood, each sound a stark reminder of what she had lost. After an agonizing wait, the door opened, but it wasn't Elvis who greeted her. Instead, a woman with a warm smile and kind eyes stood there, looking at Maria with both curiosity and pity. "Can I help you?" the woman asked softly. Maria's heart sank as she recognized the woman, Elvis's new partner, the person who had taken her place. "I need to speak to Elvis," Maria stammered, her voice cracking. "Please, it's important." The woman hesitated briefly before stepping aside. "Come in," she said, her tone still gentle. Maria entered, her eyes quickly scanning the living room. It was filled with photos of Elvis, the kids, and this woman, all of them looking happy and content, a sharp contrast to the life Maria had been leading. It was like stepping into a life that had moved on without her. Elvis appeared in the doorway, his expression unreadable as he saw Maria in his home. "What do you want, Maria?" he asked, his voice cold and distant. Tears welled up in Maria's eyes as she fell to her knees. "I made a mistake, Elvis. Please forgive me. Let me come back. I miss you and the kids. I was wrong." Elvis looked at her, his expression hardening as he recalled the pain she had caused. He thought of the night spent comforting Rose, the anger in Jake's eyes, and how Maria had laughed at him as she walked out. "You made your choice, Maria," he stated, his voice firm like steel. "You wanted a life without us, and now you have it. You're not welcome here anymore." Maria's sobs filled the room, but Elvis's heart had hardened. He had moved on and rebuilt his life without her, and he wasn't about to let her back in. Lisa stepped forward, placing her hand gently on Maria's shoulder. "It's time to go," she said softly. Through her tear-blurred vision, Maria saw the life she had once taken for granted, the warmth, the love, the stability, and knew it was gone forever. As she was gently led out of the house, the door closed behind her with finality, echoing in her soul. Standing on the porch, Maria realized she had lost everything: her family, her home, and the man who had once loved her. The life she had forsaken for a fleeting fantasy was now merely a memory, leaving her with nothing but regret. 12 years had passed, and the life Elvis once knew had been completely transformed. The house, once filled with the echoes of betrayal, now buzzed with laughter, love, and the hum of a family that had risen from the ashes. Elvis had become a successful and respected figure in his industry, a man who had rebuilt his life brick by brick. His children, Jake and Rose, had grown into extraordinary young adults. Jake, once a teenager consumed by anger and confusion, had channeled that energy into building his own business empire. At 27, he was a successful entrepreneur, known for his innovative ideas and relentless drive. His recent wedding had been a celebration of love, resilience, and new beginnings, attended by friends and family who had witnessed his incredible journey. Rose, once a little girl when her mother walked out, was now a confident and driven young woman, excelling in college on her way to becoming a doctor, a dream she had nurtured for years. Her determination and compassion were evident in everything she did, traits she had inherited from her father, who had been her rock through the darkest times. The scars of Maria's betrayal, though still present, had long since healed. They served as reminders of the strength they had found in each other and the life they had built together. The toxic presence of the past had no place in the home they had created, a home filled with warmth, support, and unconditional love. One evening, Elvis and Lisa, along with Jake, Rose, and their closest friends, attended a charity event in the city. The ballroom was elegant, a celebration of community leaders and philanthropists, and Elvis, now a cornerstone of his community, was one of the honorees. As they mingled with the crowd, exchanging greetings and catching up with old acquaintances, Elvis felt a profound sense of pride, not just in his professional achievements, but in the family he had nurtured and the life they had all worked so hard to create. Lisa, the woman who had brought so much love and stability into their lives, held his hand, their fingers intertwined, a silent testament to the bond they shared. But then, across the room, Elvis caught sight of a figure he had not expected to see: Maria. She stood alone, looking gaunt and weary, her once vibrant beauty now diminished by years of hardship and regret. Her clothes were worn, her hair lacked its former luster, and the confident demeanor she once projected was gone. She appeared as a mere shadow of the woman she once was, and it was evident that life had been unkind to her. Maria's eyes met Elvis's, and for a moment the world around them seemed to pause. She took a hesitant step forward, her gaze pleading, as if hoping to reclaim some semblance of the life she had lost. However, Elvis's face remained unreadable, a wall of calm detachment. He felt no anger, no sadness, only indifference. As Maria slowly approached, Elvis turned his attention back to his family. He subtly guided Lisa and the children toward a group of friends, deliberately steering them away from Maria's path. The group settled at a table with old friends, and soon the air was filled with laughter and the warmth of shared memories. Elvis and Lisa engaged in a lively discussion about their upcoming vacation plans, while Jake and Rose shared their latest ventures with the group, their faces glowing with excitement and pride. It was a moment of pure contentment, a scene Maria could only observe from afar. Maria's eyes filled with tears as she watched them. The joy on their faces, the love they shared, it was all painfully familiar, yet completely out of reach. She had made her choice years ago, and now the consequences of that choice were starkly apparent. The family she had once taken for granted had moved on, grown stronger, and found happiness without her. In her desperate search for a better life, she had ended up with nothing. The tears began to fall freely, and Maria quickly turned away, not wanting anyone to see her in such a vulnerable state. She moved to the edge of the room, away from the laughter and light, where she could dwell on her regrets in solitude. She stood by a large window, staring out into the night, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. The city lights sparkled in the distance, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped her life. For Elvis, the night continued without interruption. He was fully present with his family and friends, the memories of the past relegated to a distant corner of his mind. He no longer felt the need to look back. His life had become a testament to resilience, rebuilt with love and care, surrounded by people who truly mattered. As the evening drew to a close, the group decided to leave the event together, stepping out into the cool night air. They walked toward their cars, still chatting and laughing, a night of success in more ways than one. Holding Lisa's hand, Elvis felt a deep sense of peace. The pain of the past was finally behind him, and the future was bright. Maria watched them from a distance, standing in the shadows as they left. She was alone, forgotten by the people she had once abandoned, left to face the harsh reality of the life she had chosen. The life she had destroyed for a fleeting fantasy was now nothing more than a memory, a painful reminder of what could have been. As Elvis and his family drove away, the world moved on without Maria, leaving her in the silence of her regrets. She had lost everything: her family, her home, and the man who had once loved her. Now, she had nothing but the cold embrace of loneliness to keep her company.